Hello and welcome to the big picture. Great Britain will have a referendum tomorrow where the people will be asked to vote on whether they want the country to stay in the 28-member European Union or leave it. This referendum has acquired an extremely contentious nature, with opinion polls showing the British almost equally divided. The campaign in favor of leaving the Union has been arguing against immigrants coming into Britain, apart from talking about regaining the past glory of the British Empire. While those wanting to remain see many benefits of remaining in the European Union. Unfortunately, the referendum has become so bitter that one of the lady MPs, Jo Cox, was killed by a person apparently for supporting the campaign to remain in the European Union. Reports have come today that another lady MP, Wat Cooper, has also been threatened for campaigning for remaining in the European Union. Why has this referendum become necessary and so contentious? What is it that the Prime Minister David Cameron aimed to achieve when he offered this referendum? What will be the repercussions for Britain as well as the European Union if the vote is in favor of leaving the Union or otherwise? We will discuss all this today with Shankar Mukherjee, former Indian High Commissioner to United Kingdom, Patrick French, historian and author, Sheetal Sharma, Assistant Professor, Center for European Studies at the JNU, and Dipankar Sarkar, journalist at the Mint newspaper and also a former European correspondent for the Hindustan Times. Welcome to all of you. Mr. Mukherjee, what did the Prime Minister Cameron have in mind when he offered this referendum?
Well, this is actually not something utterly new. There has always been Euroscepticism in Britain to a small or a large extent. I remember when I served in Brussels in the late 70s and early 80s, there was not only, and Britain's entry, as you know, was equally controversial. It was denied twice by the famous No of Charles de Gaulle. But to leap over to current times, the feeling in Britain that they are giving much more to the EU than they're getting back, not just financially, but in terms of the overall surrender of sovereignty, has been growing. Now, if you look at the debate between the leavers and those who want to remain, and strip it down to the bare essentials, the arguments for remaining are basically economic. That we gain as an economy by being members of Europe. We are at the table where big decisions are taken about Europe. Europe is our biggest market. If we leave Europe, we are out in the cold. We lose our position as one of the world's premier financial centers. Our economy will take a hit. The Chancellor of the Exchequer has said, in my budget, I'll have to increase taxes. I'll have to do various nasty things because every British family will lose over £4,000 a year in income, and so on and so forth. It's a basic economic argument. The Leaves, on the other hand, and there's no doubt about this in my mind, are spreading a very populist message based on fear and emotion. And it all boils down to two aspects of the same populist message, which is, one, our jobs are being grabbed because of this United East Europeans and so on and so forth. And added to that now is this fear which is being whipped up of and the latest posters, they are in fact highlighting that. It's almost a throwback to Nazi Germany, of these hordes of immigrants who will swamp us, from the Turks to the Syrians to everybody, who will not only then take our jobs, finish Britain as we know it culturally, but there is this added fear in today's world of terrorists coming along with this swarm of immigrants. You have this heady cocktail message as a message from the ones who want to leave. And it's a message, to my mind, this kind of message in most countries resonates because it's populist. It falls on fertile ground in the minds of people who are in an economy which has not yet recovered from the 2008 financial tsunami and so on. Cameron is being accused of, when he renegotiated certain terms to sort of take the wind out of the sails of the Leavers earlier, he was accused of doing it too fast, too little and too late, and that he did not get as many concessions out of the European Commission as he could have. He's, of course, the ones who remain are passionately pursuing the economic message. But as your report indicated quite correctly, it's very close to call. The only thing I can say in addition to this is that regardless of what is the result, leave or remain, it looks likely that it's going to be in favor of remain by a very small margin. If, for instance, it's leave, you'll probably next have a demand for from Scotland for a referendum. There'll be trouble in Britain in any case because this acrimony is going to remain for a long time.
We will come to that. Patrick, this acrimony which is being spoken about, the kind of acrimony which we are witnessing, why has this happened? You know, why do you think Britain is facing these kind of circumstances now?
Well, I think if you look at the origins of this referendum, it comes from internal divisions within David Cameron's Conservative Party. There are a lot of more right-wing members of the Conservative Party who take the view that the reassertion of national sovereignty is more important than economic self-interest. And because those squabbles have become so vicious in the last 10 years or so, he thought the way to deal with that was to have a popular vote, a popular referendum. But I think in doing so, he has unleashed, as the previous speaker indicated, some very nasty, very vicious, xenophobic forces into British public life, culminating in the murder of the MP Joe Cox last week. And if you look at an approximate demographic breakdown of how people are voting, the people who are voting for remaining within the European Union tend to be younger generation, they tend to be more urban, they tend to be better educated, and the people who want to quit, the Brexiteers as they are known, are more likely to be older generation, perhaps a little nostalgic for an earlier version of how the United Kingdom used to be. They're often less well educated, and what appeals to them is a very strong emotional argument of saying your country has been taken from you and the only way that you can regain it is by voting to quit the European Union. And my personal view on this, having been in the UK for the last couple of months, is that if Britain does decide to leave, the difficulty is that the European continues to be the most powerful trading bloc with which it has to do business. So whether you're technically a member of the EU or not, you still have to participate in its economic life. That is the difficulty for the Brexit argument.
Okay, we will come to that later. Sheetal, how seriously is this vote going to divide the people of Britain post the vote? What is going to be the result? We don't know. We'll have to wait and watch.
Girish, I offer a kind of extension of the kind of arguments which are going and answering your question as well. See, much has changed since Britain joined, and at the same time after fall of wall and the latest expansion of European Union. Now 28-member bloc, which the Britain wants to leave now, and half of the people, it's a very tightrope walk that what will be the outcome of the referendum. But much has changed in the fact that earlier, the quest was for multicultural adjustment of people from different backgrounds. But if we look at the event of 9/11 and the world after 9/11, the cultural issue has been replaced by the religious differences. And it creates a very, distinct sets of people or groups, we versus them. And as you are asking, what kind of impact it is going to have, both the leave and the remain camp have their emotional as well as economic cost and benefit analysis that they have been doing, and they have been trying to project their argument with more strength and vigor. But for 3 days it was suspended because of, and it's good that the vote shifted more towards remain rather than leave. But what will certainly happen, this will consolidate at least the right wing in my opinion, because even if they lose, what will happen, there would be a kind of, kind of reaction to the kind of situation that, oh, we lost. And the possibility of, or the outcome of that situation will be, there will be greater negative portrayal, scapegoating of the groups whom they are right now targeting as people who are coming and eating their jobs. If you see that at the heart of this entire argument, is immigrants, and they are coming, they are eating their jobs. But at the same time, the soul of EU is the freedom of movement. Because we have been trying to replicate all sorts of organization, political, economic, ASEAN, SAARC. Nothing is as successful as European Union because of the freedom of movement, capital, and people from one place to another. And this would be an attack on the soul of the European Union. Because most of these people, those who are Brits, like Patrick was right now saying that the older generation is against and the young generation is for remaining in. Now, what young generation shows? Young generation shows a kind of assimilative character towards the modern day living, where they understand that it's better for them also and for the others also to have benefits of development and share the fruits of development and intercultural mixing. But at the same time, the older generation has a kind of nostalgia and they want to go back to those golden days or the days where they think they were in control of their sovereignty. So what will happen? The outcome is going to certainly consolidate the extreme positions, which would be very difficult to counter in the future, given the fact that the right wing is on the rise in all other big European
entire
nations.
region, actually.
Yes.
Dipankar, this migrants issue, this is something. Britain has always seen migrants from different parts of the world, always there. Why this antagonism? When did it start, and why is it started?
Well, to get to that point, Girish, first of all, I have to say that I'm very upset at the very low level of discourse and debate that's been happening in the UK over this. There are all kinds of...
This just reflects what is happening in other parts of the world also.
Of course it does.
What's happening in US.
Absolutely, absolutely. The murder of Joe Cox...
What's happening here also.
Absolutely. The murder of Joe Cox and the rise of Donald Trump, violence on the streets of America and the violence on the streets of the UK, and the threat you're talking about to Yvette. I mean, this is you could not imagine this kind of violence, both mental, psychological violence and actual physical violence in the UK, even up to 2-3 years ago. To get back to your question, this is, to my mind, less to do with European immigration and more to do with non-European immigration. That is where this whole debate started.
You think the Syrian, the migrant from Syria, is that something?
As Ambassador Mukherjee quite correctly pointed out, a campaign poster of Nigel Farage, the leader of the extreme right-wing UKIP, standing in front of or portraying Syrian refugees. I mean, this is exactly the kind of thing that's going on in the US. So, it has started, this whole debate started with Indian immigration. Skilled Indian immigrants going to the UK, taking jobs, not taking other people's jobs.
Exactly.
It's not a zero-sum game. Europeans now coming into the UK are not taking up other people's jobs. According to a study by the LSE, I've been mining data as much as I possibly. The Europeans coming into the UK are younger, as Patrick says about those who are pro-Remain. They are younger Europeans, more skilled Europeans, more educated Europeans. They complement the skills that are already existing in the UK. They are not taking away anybody's jobs. They are net contributors to the UK economy. In other words, they put in more by way of taxes than those among them who are on the welfare. So, this whole debate is so false, is so patently aimed at encouraging and placating the right wing. Why? Because there has been a right since the recession, since the tsunami of recession. There has been, UK has gone through a prolonged phase of jobless growth. Now growth is declining. You have at the same time an extremely skilled, powerful city, the services sector, which is what powers the UK. It has stopped being a manufacturing power. Yes, they will be looking for markets. there are markets, India and China. There is a search for that market. And if you feel that you are being held back by the EU, then what is then
Okay, Patrick, one of the major arguments, as all of you are pointing out, of the people who are in favor of leaving the European Union is about the issue of migrants. Do you think that if the vote tomorrow is in favor of exiting the European Union, you think this problem of migrants will get resolved?
Well, I'm glad that you asked that question, because I think one important aspect of this that perhaps has been a little forgotten in the debate so far is that the levels of immigration to the United Kingdom since roughly 1997 have shot up. So the lower levels of post-war immigration have been multiplied significantly to the point where you now will frequently have up to a million people being given British citizenship each year. That would be the equivalent of India giving Indian nationality to perhaps proportionately about 10. Now, that is pretty much inconceivable. There is almost no internal immigration to India. So, while we can say that the Brexit campaign has been xenophobic and unpleasant, it is based on a genuine cultural change. And I think that it's important to acknowledge that. I think the real difficulty is the fact that whether or not Britain votes to leave the European Union, it will be very difficult to stop significant migration both from inside and outside the EU, partly because of the
Patrick, there is some problem with your audio.
Plus.
Sorry, Patrick, there is some problem with your audio. We'll fix it. I'll come back to you. Mr. Mukherjee, leaving the European Union, what are the repercussions of that?
Well, going by the enormous amount of facts, statistics, and studies that have been proffered by the people who want to remain against, leaving the European Union, there's a host of arguments that have been given out by organizations and individuals who must be considered to be credible. The Chancellor of the Exchequer has pointed to the fact that he'll have to tighten the budget enormously, that Britons will lose their real income. There'll be a capital flight. There will be the need to renegotiate all kinds of trade agreements and treaties with the European Union, which, according to the leaves, will not be very difficult because they have to counter that argument. They're saying it'll take 2 or 3 years. But the fact is that they will be not part of the European Union's one of the 4 pillars is the free movement of goods, people, and services. That's in fact the first of the 4 pillars. Now they won't be part of that. They will have to negotiate whatever terms there are. They might become. The leaves are in fact being a little clever and offering the Norwegian model. Norwegian model is not to be part of the European Union, but to be part of what is called the European Economic Area, which means they give in a certain amount of sovereignty by accepting the Schengen visa, but they do not have to be part of the European Union's decisions. The negative side of that is that because you're not bound by European Union decisions, you also don't have a seat at the table in influencing those decisions. Right. So that's being offered as a kind of via media to counter the economic argument. But the economic argument offered by the ones who say we must remain is, I think, overall convincing, because I'm not an expert, but most of the world outside accepts those arguments, including India. The US, the big financial institutions, the IMF, the World Bank, the Bank of England, they're all for remain. So certainly it seems as though the economic argument, as far as that is concerned, is convincing, and that Britain should remain within the European Union. As I said, and as I think our panelists have pointed out, against that is a non-economic argument which resonates. And I've served in countries which are dictatorships. I've served in countries which are democracies. I've served in the US where there's a major political issue on immigration, and in the UK where there's a major political issue on immigration. These are populist measures and fears that economic argument sometimes cannot prevail over.
Cannot counter. Patrick, sorry, yes. Will you continue, please?
Yes. Well, I mean, I think the point I was making was about the question of migration inevitably continuing into
Exactly.
the UK, regardless of whether or not Brexit goes ahead. And that's partly the result of events in West Asia, like the war in Syria, resulting in significant numbers of people crossing into southern Europe. But it's also the fact that at the moment there are a very significant number of people from across the European Union doing jobs in the UK. Now, I know that most employers would be very reluctant for those people to leave. And so somehow, in the event of Brexit, and I think the chances of that happening today are something like 25%, so it's looking less likely than it did a week or a fortnight ago. In the event that does happen, Britain or the United Kingdom, what's left of it, will have to somehow cobble together all sorts of international agreements about the movement of peoples, about economic and trading links with a whole host of countries. And inevitably that will really create a situation of localized chaos for at least the next 10 years.
Okay. Sheetal, as far as India is concerned, should India be worried about which way the vote goes?
The whole world, as Patrick and other panelists are also saying, that we are in favor of remaining in the EU. The reason is that although it may not impact India as much as the fear may be, the three things that we have to keep into our mind, that the Indian businesses, which are actually trying to gain entry into the EU, or which are also doing business with other 27 countries via Britain, they certainly will have to look for the new ways of tie-ups, treaties, negotiations, and then
Right now it is said that UK is the channel to the other European countries.
Why more so in the case is that we have a colonial history, and being part of UK actually gives us a doorway to other European countries, for the fact that first there is a presence of Indian diaspora. Much of the cultural mixing of Indian diaspora and the kind of sense of comfort that we feel in Europe, and particularly in Britain, in London, as compared to Amsterdam or Paris or any other street. The second is that the language that we speak and we communicate with UK as compared to the other European countries, French, German, Spanish, and all others. But this actually gives us a window of entry or door of entry into the other UK nations. But at the same time, what we must also understand, that the ball of globalization and particularly Europeanization has been set rolling, and it is irreversible. We just can't undo the entire movement of people, of capital, of industry, growth, development, whatever is there now integrated with European Union and UK as part of it. So it would not be a great difficulty for us as compared to the United Kingdom itself, but certainly there will be a kind of renegotiation, restructuring of the entire economic deals as far as India is concerned.
Yes.
Plus the diaspora that is present there.
Okay, yes, I'll come to you. Yes, Mr.
Well, I tend to agree only partly with what Sheetal has said. This is conventional wisdom. ASOCHAM, well, FICCI and CII certainly have issued statements, which is very unusual for them, that they are worried about, India is worried about, Indian business is worried about Brexit, because Britain is India's gateway to Europe. There are 800 Indian companies operating there. The comfort factors that Sheetal mentioned.
India is supposed to be the largest FDI,
No, well, we are the third largest investors in the UK. I mean, we are major investors in the UK. The UK is a fairly major investor in India. I think, and I'm prepared to defend this, these arguments are completely overstated. Our business has been lazy in terms of dealing with the parts of the world we don't speak English. We neglected the whole of West Africa for almost 30 years before we woke up. And by that time, the Chinese and others had taken over simply because West Africa spoke French. We concentrated on East Africa and Southern Africa. This whole business of England being a gateway to Europe flies in the face of a whole host of more than 100 other countries who do not use England as a gateway to Europe and trade very competently and efficiently with Europe, including giants like Japan and China who don't speak English, but who are major trading partners in the world. As far as the 800 Indian companies are concerned, I have a very cynical opinion. Barring a few of the big ones, like the Tatas, who are probably the biggest employers in the UK now, or Infosys or some of our major organized companies, a large number of these Indian companies basically do not do anything for India. They are companies that employ British nationals. So why should I get worried about the loss of jobs over there if they leave or remain? Number one. Number two, the majority of these companies do not benefit India in the direct sense. They are benefiting themselves through under-invoicing and over-invoicing. They are benefiting themselves by all sorts of shady operations and keeping money abroad, as I said, with honorable exceptions. And in any case...
So what's the point?
The point is that this whole argument about India being also threatened by Brexit because of losing their gateway into Europe is an overstated argument, and it's wrong.
And we can survive.
Not only survive, we will be forced to be more professional and deal directly with countries whom we should deal directly with.
Okay. Yes, Dipankar.
Ambassador Mukherjee speaks with great sense of realpolitik. There's one thing, Girish, which we need to take account of. Euroscepticism runs right the way across the left to the right in the UK. The right's argument, we know, sovereignty and all of that, the bureaucracy, we are under their thumb.
The bureaucracy of the European Union is suppressing us.
And ruling our lives.
Yes.
The left wing is equally important. There is this whole trade union, it is partly led by trade union sentiment that Europeans workers are driving wages down in the UK, and that what should have been the resources of the welfare system going into our native population is now going into foreigners, and these have been systematically demolished by people who have studied these, especially.
So there's a lot of hype going on as far as the Brexit proponents are concerned.
Both from the left and the right, which is very important to understand.
That is another interesting thing. That leaving the people who are supporting to leave the European Union cuts across political parties, cuts across all
Yes.
That's the most interesting.
Absolutely. And this is, Euroscepticism has run deep in the UK, this island nation, for a long time.
Yes.
And now, when you have people like Boris Johnson, former mayor of London, saying in an FT article that we used to have the biggest empire that this planet has ever seen. Okay, nostalgically invoking this great
the past. So they're trying to go back to that past. Patrick, very quickly. What do you think will be the what do you think will be the repercussions either way? Whatever may be the result of the vote.
If there is Brexit, I think we will have a gravely shaken European and potentially global economy. I think Britain may well find itself going into recession. I think the attempt at global renegotiation of treaties will be extremely complex. In the event that Britain stays in the European Union, the United Kingdom stays within the European Union, which is probably much more likely, I think, then to an extent the poison of Euroscepticism will have been lanced from the body politic, because at last, finally, the Brexiteers had their opportunity for a referendum and they blew it. They offered a vision of the past, a vision of imperial nostalgia, which I'm confident will be rejected by most United Kingdom voters tomorrow.
Okay. I think on that note, we need to end. We will wait and watch what tomorrow we will get to know what will be the result of the vote, and after that we'll again have a look at what it means, whatever the result is. Thanks to all my guests. Please keep watching. We'll come back with Andhrush in the big picture same time tomorrow.